question is to the Premier. Did the Premier's department provide the South Australian Museum with a dedicated change manager to manage the restructure at the museum, and if so, at what cost?
The Minister for the Arts.
Yes, there was DPC support provided for a change manager. I will take on notice the question of cost.
The member for Morialta.
So my questions to the Premier. When was the Premier and indeed the Minister for the Arts first provided a briefing in relation to the restructure of the South Australian Museum? And with your leave, sir, and that of the House, I'll explain.
Leave assured, is leave granted.
Thank you. The Museum Board's September minutes released under FOI describe proposed meetings being planned with the Minister, DPC and DTF to gain approval for the proposed restructure. The November and December minutes then refer to such meetings taking place with senior executives within the Premier's department.
The Premier.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Shadow Minister for Education for his question, Leader of Opposition Business. Let me say from the outset, Mr Speaker, that this government is committed to ensuring that the museum is able to maintain a position of leadership around the nation as being a great institution that serves our state's scientific community well and does justice to the extraordinary collection that we have under our stewardship through the museum. We are committed to making sure that the museum's strategic approach into the future is fit for purpose to honour both pursuits, but is also evolving in such a way that it appeals to as many demographics as possible. As the Shadow Minister is well aware, the stewardship of the museum on a day-to-day basis is bestowed within the SA Museum Board, and they have the responsibility to set that direction, employ people and other day-to-day functions. Notwithstanding that, the state government sees its role as being an important one as, I guess, the ultimate shareholder in that endeavour, which is why the Minister and I have made the decision to intervene in the proposed restructure that the museum was pursuing, was generating a degree of concern amongst many of those within our community who share this government's passion for the museum itself. We make no apologies for that intervention. That intervention is characterised as putting on hold the restructure that the museum board had put in train, and then in turn putting in its place a very quick review to be led by three people, chaired by the CEO of DPC, Mr Damien Walker, and then the Chief Scientist, which the Deputy Premier has recently appointed and has a great history and a CV that reflects their commitment to science, but then also the Director of the Queensland Museum, who themselves is also a former scientist or chief scientist in their state. We think between those three individuals we can formulate a path forward. There will be active engagement with representatives of those, if we call them the concerned group, who have been campaigning against the proposed museum restructure. They will be actively engaged with, which I think is appropriate given the level of organisation and concern that the proposed museum restructure had raised. Can I also take this opportunity, Mr Speaker, though, to illuminate the House and the broader public with some of the misinformation that those opposite have been peddling. The idea that that somehow that the museum needed to be saved, or that somehow that there was being a closure, a plan to close certain galleries when there is not. But they will do their political misinformation and should be held to account at various forms. But this government will get on with the job to making sure that our museum is fit for purpose and serves the community well into the future.
Moriata.
Did the Premier, his department or his minister approve the restructure and provide support for its delivery to the museum? And with your leave and that of the House, I'll explain, sir.
Leave is sought. Is leave granted?
Thank you. The Museum Board's September minutes released under FOI identify that the museum's briefings to the Minister and DPC would in fact not only seek the provision of a dedicated and experienced change management resource, but would also seek approval for the proposed restructure. It's to be noted also, sir, that under the South Australian Museum Act, Clause 14 identifies that the board staff consist of public service employees assigned to assist the board. The board may, under an arrangement with the minister administering an administrative unit of the public service, make use of the services or staff of that administrative unit, in this case under the employ of DPC.
Premier.
Speaker, I think the government's position is clear. We've intervened to pause the restructure. We've intervened. Mr. Speaker, I think it's pretty clear. We've intervened to stop the restructure. I mean, I don't know how you could characterise that as any form of approval. Any form of approval. Now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Moriata.
I'll tell you what this government didn't approve. The savage cuts bestowed by the former government on the museum. That's right, Mr.
Member for Moriata.
We know.
Member for Moriata. You were heard in silence.
We know the former government's record, and now they're feigning an interest. Now they're feigning an interest in the future of the museum when they took a flamethrower to its budget. So, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Moriata.
The record is clear. They've been called out.
Member for Moriata.
And now
you're on a warning,
course,
member for Moriata.
Now, of course, we are fortunate that a government is showing
your second
greater
warning,
interest.
member for Moriata.
The government is now showing a greater interest in the pursuit and the future of the museum than those opposite ever pursued during their time in government. So we won't be taking any lessons from those opposite. Their famed petitions standing at the front, save the museum that we took a flamethrower to. That's what their petition should read like. But we will engage as a government with those people in the community who have a legitimate interest in the museum, those people who have donated their funds, dedicated their labour, volunteered so assiduously. We will engage with those people who are truly interested in the museum's future, and then make sure we get on with the task with a thoughtful pursuit into the future. The Minister, I am grateful for her advocacy, her engagement in this process, and we will make sure that we get a good outcome for the people of our state when it comes to the future of the museum.
Just a little bit late.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir.
Member for Moriata.
Noting the Premier's answer in which he described the relative contribution of funding by his government to the former government, can the Premier update the House as to whether the square metre of provided storage space in the $80 million storage facility provided by the former Liberal government to the museum and other collecting institutions has been maintained, or has it rather been dramatically cut since this government came to office?
Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Shadow Minister will be well aware that the government is in the process of doing our budget deliberations. We are serious as a government about investing in a range of different pursuits, and they have represented through all the activities of this government. We've got a bit of a different approach. We're running a budget. We're running a budget that is back in surplus, which again stands in stark contrast to those that are opposite. We're running a budget that is underpinning economic growth, which is stark contrast to those opposite. And we're also running a budget. We're running a budget that is investing in arts and culture. Now, again, if we were to do the compare and contrast piece, Mr. Speaker, we would know that the former government used to go to arts events, but then cut the arts institutions that run those events. That's right. So there was all the sort of all the activities to send signals, but when it came to really the meat on the bones, it was sorely lacking. And we're adopting a different approach. We're adopting a different approach, and when people want to know the dollars allocated to various pursuits in the budget, then of course they can look forward to seeing that in only a few short weeks' time.